Stop. Don't scroll. You feel like you barely survived this last season, don't you? The chapter that the envious one designed to be your permanent graveyard has just been violently sealed shut by God's own hands. It is over. You survived. The cycle is broken. The book is closed. If you can feel the weight lifting off your chest right now, stay with me. The name of your next chapter is about to be revealed. Sitting on the edge of the bed in the quiet of the morning, staring at the wall, feeling a profound bone-deep weariness, you are realizing you barely survived the spiritual crossfire of the last season. The envious one orchestrated a series of seemingly unconnected betrayals, silent rejections and sudden losses, aiming to keep you trapped in an endless loop of fighting the exact same battles. They wanted to break you through chronic exhaustion. They wanted you so tired that you would simply give up the fight. But I need you to understand a spiritual law right now. A season of warfare doesn't end just because the enemy runs out of ammunition. It ends abruptly when the Creator's hands physically shut the book and issue a sovereign decree of enough. In this precise hour of spiritual culmination and divine transition, that decree has been issued over your life. I know you have carried the silent, crushing burden of holding the atmosphere of the house together. I know you have been smiling through the pain, while your own family and friends didn't even realize you were fighting for your sanity in the dark. You have spent this last chapter desperately leaning your entire body weight against a heavy, rusting iron door, trying to keep a violent storm from bursting into your home. Your muscles are failing. Your knees are giving out. But just as the door is about to fly open and destroy everything, massive, warm hands reach over your shoulders. They effortlessly slam the iron door shut. You hear the heavy lock turn, and the storm outside is instantly silenced. Divine severance has taken place. I also searched for answers when I felt that same crushing exhaustion, and look at what I found. There is a revelation that explains exactly why the attacks were so relentless and how to permanently blind the enemy to your next moves. Go to the first pinned comment right now. You will find a digital book there called The 7 Spiritual Reasons Why the Chosen Ones Face So Much Envy. It is not just words on a screen, it is the blueprint for your vindication. Touch the link. Secure your copy right now before the enemy tries to distract you again. The shifting of seasons is happening right under your feet. The door they tried to break down is permanently sealed, and the envious one can never reopen that specific chapter again. God is stepping in. Your exhaustion is being replaced by His sovereign authority. Do not look back at the wreckage. The storm is over. Close your eyes for a second, or at least look away from the screen. Take a deep breath. Settle into this moment. Because I'm not speaking to the air, I'm speaking directly to your spirit. I'm going to describe 5 things to you. If I'm right about at least 3 of them, you and I will know exactly why you stopped here. First, you have been waking up in the morning already feeling a profound, bone-deep weariness, as if you had been fighting a physical battle all night. You sit on the edge of the bed in the quiet, staring at the wall, feeling a heavy pressure on your chest. You are spending your days desperately leaning your entire body weight against a heavy, rusting iron door just to keep a violent storm outside. That is not natural fatigue. That is the exhaustion of relentless spiritual crossfire designed to break your will. Second, you have experienced a sudden, unexplained season of isolation where people you thought were your allies silently faded away. There was no massive argument, no explosive confrontation, just a quiet, systematic removal of voices from your daily life. You found yourself standing alone, wondering if you did something wrong to push them away. That was not a social dynamic failing. That was the envious one orchestrating silent rejections to keep you trapped in a loop of fighting the exact same battles without backup. Third, and this one cuts the deepest, you have carried the silent, crushing burden of holding the atmosphere of your house together entirely on your own. You have been smiling through the pain, preparing meals, and going to work, while your own family and friends did not even realize you were fighting for your sanity in the dark. You became the emotional shock absorber for everyone else's chaos, while no one checked on your own breaking point. They thought you were just strong, completely unaware of the spiritual warfare tearing at your edges. And regarding those seemingly unconnected betrayals and silent rejections you just recognized, there is a protective mechanism that stops this hemorrhage. The access to it is pinned in the first comment below. Secure it before they try to blind you again. Fourth, you have noticed a bizarre pattern of delays and sudden losses right at the finish line of your breakthroughs. Every time you were about to step into a season of rest, a sudden financial drain, a broken promise, or an unexpected crisis erupted out of nowhere, dragging you back into survival mode. You started to feel like you were cursed to almost win, but never actually cross the line. That was not bad luck. That was a targeted strike to drain your remaining ammunition just as you were about to rest. Fifth, despite the heavy door about to fly open, despite your muscles failing and your knees giving out, you have felt an inexplicable presence holding you together in your lowest hour. When you finally hit the floor and whispered that you were too tired to continue, massive, warm hands reached over your shoulders. You felt a sudden, heavy lock turn, and the storm outside was instantly silenced. You wanted to quit, but the Creator's own hands physically shut the book and issued a sovereign decree over your life. Now take a second. How many of those 5 resonated? 3? 4? 5? If at least 3 resonated, you already know this message is for you. The cycle you have been trapped in was a highly calculated spiritual operation, but the divine severance has already begun. You're about to discover how the sovereign decree of enough is activating a permanent covering over your household, a spiritual armor that completely changes the atmosphere around you. I told you earlier, the chapter that the envious one designed to be your permanent graveyard has just been violently sealed shut by God's own hands. You survived the wreckage, but survival is not the final destination. The transition from merely surviving to walking under the shadow of the Almighty requires you to understand the exact mechanism of your vindication. Before I show you the instrument of covering that will shield your exhausted spirit from any further attacks, I need to give you the name of what you carry, because the shield only makes sense after you know the name of the target. And there is a word in Hebrew that defines exactly this definitive closure and termination of the cycle, a word that recontextualizes everything I just described to you over the last few minutes. There is a word in the original Hebrew that changes everything you thought you knew. When you see these exact 5 signs aligning in your daily life, the diagnosis becomes undeniable. This is not natural fatigue. It is a highly calculated spiritual operation. The seal of this hour you are crossing has been seen. Do not ignore the precision of these attacks against your peace, because between being chosen and being covered, there is a gap the envious one knows better than you. They exploited this vulnerability to completely drain your spirit, not because the anointing was revoked, because this precise hour of spiritual culmination and divine transition has arrived, and the enemy desperately wanted you too exhausted to claim it. I recognize that bone-deep weariness because I have stood exactly where you are, leaning my entire weight against that same rusting iron door. There was a season in my own life when I was silently holding the atmosphere of my house together, smiling through the pain while unexplained betrayals and sudden losses systematically broke me down. The spiritual crossfire was so intense, I thought my knees would permanently give out. I searched everywhere for a way to stop the hemorrhage. It was in that absolute exhaustion that God intervened and revealed the exact spiritual mechanism to forcibly close the cycle. He handed me the blueprint to bypass the enemy's traps and permanently seal the borders of my life. I did not document this mechanism for those who live untested, comfortable lives. I wrote this for the ones who are tired of being the emotional shock absorber for everyone else's chaos. I organized this specifically for the chosen ones who are ready to hear the heavy lock turn and the storm completely silenced. If you know you cannot survive another loop of fighting the exact same battles, I need you to make a physical decision right now. Take your thumb and press the like button on this video. That is not a metric for an algorithm. That is a physical declaration that you are ready for the Creator's massive hands to intervene. When this cycle is broken, the atmosphere of your house changes instantly. The silent rejections will no longer dictate your worth. The sudden losses at the finish line will be permanently blocked, and that crushing burden of holding everything together alone will be lifted by a sovereign decree. This is the absolute victory over the enemy's design to destroy you through exhaustion. I mapped out this exact spiritual defense in a digital book called The 7 Spiritual Reasons Why the Chosen Ones Face So Much Envy. It will show you exactly how to navigate this precise hour of divine transition. This is the shift from merely surviving the wreckage to stepping fully into Psalm 91:1. He who dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. It was exactly in pursuit of this answer that I was led to write this digital book called The 7 Spiritual Reasons Why the Chosen Ones Face So Much Envy. You survived the specific chapter of warfare the enemy designed to break your spirit, but now it is time to be permanently shielded. Go to the first pinned comment, tap the link right now, secure your copy while the door is open. And if you are among the first to step into this covering today, I'm going to make sure your household is sealed. This covering costs less than that rushed breakfast you grab on a stressful morning after staring at the wall in weariness. It is less than what you spend on a coffee run to artificially wake up your exhausted body. It is less than that quick, impulsive purchase you make just to feel a fleeting moment of relief from the heavy pressure on your chest. I know the envious one will try to whisper that nothing will ever change, that you are destined to remain trapped in this endless loop of fighting. But that is the exact lie they use to keep you paralyzed when God is actively using His own hands to seal this destructive chapter shut. And there is a 7-day guarantee protecting this decision. If you read the revelation and do not feel the immediate weight lifting off your chest, if you do not see the massive, warm hands shutting the iron door in your life, you can ask for a full refund. You have absolute protection, but you must secure your shield in this precise hour of spiritual culmination right in the face of the storm. Several chosen ones here on the channel have already experienced this sovereign decree. Like Sarah, who was completely drained by silent rejections, but saw her entire household's atmosphere shift within days of applying this covering, or David, who was experiencing sudden financial drains right at his finish lines and watched God physically shut the door on the envious ones trying to ruin him, and Elena, who was fighting for her sanity in the dark and finally felt the crushing burden lifted as the cycle of warfare abruptly ended. You are not crazy. You are not cursed. You are not meant to be a permanent casualty of the enemy's exhaustion tactics. Do not let your own family remain unaware of the massive victory that belongs to you. If this message has been a spiritual shelter for you, and if this channel has been a source of strength during your hardest battles, consider supporting this work. Right below this video, there is a button called Thanks with a heart icon. It is a completely voluntary seed that helps this ministry continue bringing these prophetic revelations to other chosen ones who are also fighting in the dark. You can sow any amount that God places on your heart. I will be waiting for you there, again. But do not leave right now. Secure your digital book through the link in the pinned comment, but stay with me for the next 12 months of this covering. Stay, because the Hebrew word tamam that I mentioned earlier does not just mean a pause in the battle. It is the absolute consumption and termination of a cycle, and you need to know exactly how to decree it over the rusting iron door today. Look at the life of Joseph of Egypt. He understood this exact same bone-deep weariness. The pit and the prison were not just random misfortunes. They were chapters specifically designed by the envious ones, his own brothers, Potiphar's wife, to utterly destroy him. They orchestrated those seemingly unconnected betrayals and silent rejections to keep him trapped in an endless loop of fighting the exact same battles. They wanted to break him through chronic exhaustion in the dark, but those chapters were closed not by human vindication and not because the enemy simply ran out of ammunition. They were closed abruptly by God's own hands. God bypassed the enemy's plans and permanently sealed his path to launch him into the palace. There is a specific word in the original Hebrew that defines exactly what God did for Joseph and what he is doing for you in this precise hour of spiritual culmination. The word is tamam. Tamam means to be complete, to come to a definitive end, to be finished. It is not just a brief pause in the battle so you can catch your breath. It is the absolute consumption and permanent termination of a cycle. When God declares tamam over this chapter of your pain, the spiritual borders are sealed forever. The envious one can never reopen that specific door again. You have spent this last season desperately leaning your entire body weight against a heavy, rusting iron door, trying to keep a violent storm from bursting into your home. I know your muscles are failing. I know your knees are giving out. You have been carrying the silent, crushing burden of holding the atmosphere together, smiling through the pain while your own family did not even realize you were fighting for your sanity. But just as the door is about to fly open and destroy everything, massive, warm hands reach over your shoulders. They effortlessly slam the iron door shut. You hear the heavy lock turn, and the storm outside is instantly silenced. God himself has just declared tamam over your wreckage. The divine severance is complete. When you finally comprehend the absolute power of tamam, you realize why the attacks against your life have been so relentless. I need you to listen to me very carefully right now, because a season of warfare doesn't end just because the enemy runs out of ammunition. It ends abruptly when the Creator's hands physically shut the book and issue a sovereign decree of enough. That is the spiritual law. But here is the vulnerability the enemy is trying to exploit. If you do not know how to align your spirit with that sovereign decree, the envious one will keep you trapped, tricking you into believing you still have to fight a battle that God has already finished. The envious one is absolutely terrified that you will recognize what is happening around you. They know that this precise hour of spiritual culmination and divine transition is the exact moment the heavy iron door is being slammed shut by God's own hands. They are desperate to distract you, to make you focus on your exhaustion and your pain, because they know that if you step into this covering, their access to your life is permanently severed. You cannot afford to walk blindly through this transition. You cannot rely on your own failing strength when a divine severance has already been provided. That is exactly why you cannot leave this video without securing your copy of the digital book, The 7 Spiritual Reasons Why the Chosen Ones Face So Much Envy. This is not just another message to temporarily soothe your weariness. It is the exact spiritual blueprint you need to enforce the decree of enough over your household and permanently blind the enemy to your next moves. Go to the first pinned comment right now. Touch the link and claim your digital book. Do not wait for the storm to try and force the door open again. Secure your covering right now and let God's own hand seal this chapter forever. The word is tamam. To be complete, to come to a definitive end, to be finished. It is not just a pause in the battle, it is the absolute consumption and termination of a cycle. When the Creator declares tamam over this chapter of pain, the spiritual borders are permanently sealed, and the envious one can never reopen that specific door again. When you understand that the envious one designed this specific chapter of warfare not just to delay you, but to utterly break you through chronic exhaustion, you stop fighting on their terms. When you realize that the Creator's own hands are violently sealing this destructive cycle shut, you drop the heavy burden you were never meant to carry alone. And when you recognize that this precise hour of spiritual culmination and divine transition is your definitive exit strategy, you finally secure the covering your spirit desperately needs. The exact mechanism of this divine severance is waiting for you in the first pinned comment. Go there right now and secure your copy of the digital book, The 7 Spiritual Reasons Why the Chosen Ones Face So Much Envy. Do not let the enemy keep you exhausted in the dark for another hour. The word is tamam. It means to be complete, to come to a definitive end, to be finished. It is not just a temporary pause in the battle, it is the absolute consumption and termination of a cycle. When the Creator declares tamam over this chapter of pain, the spiritual borders are permanently sealed, and the envious one can never reopen that specific door again. Let me show you exactly what is happening in the spiritual realm right now. You have spent this last chapter desperately leaning your entire body weight against a heavy, rusting iron door. You have been trying to keep a violent storm from bursting into your home. Your muscles are failing and your knees are giving out. Just as the door is about to fly open and destroy everything, massive, warm hands reach over your shoulders. They effortlessly slam the iron door shut and turn a heavy lock. The storm outside is instantly silenced. That is tamam. God is not just helping you hold the door, He is sealing it shut with His own hands. The envious one orchestrated those seemingly unconnected betrayals and silent rejections to keep you trapped in an endless loop of fighting the exact same battles. They wanted you so exhausted that you would simply surrender. But they miscalculated. They forgot that a season of warfare does not end when the enemy runs out of ammunition. It ends abruptly when the Creator's hands physically shut the book and issue a sovereign decree of enough. This is your hour of divine severance. The cycle is broken, and the wreckage of your past is now the foundation of your palace. I want you to imagine the voice of the Father right now. He is looking at your tired eyes, seeing how long you desperately leaned your entire body weight against that rusting iron door, and he is saying, "My child, step away. I am closing this." That is the level of divine severance available to you today, but it requires your movement. The key to understanding this transition and never returning to that graveyard of exhaustion is detailed inside the digital book, The 7 Spiritual Reasons Why the Chosen Ones Face So Much Envy. This is your blueprint for absolute closure. To secure this covering, the investment is less than the cost of a couple of energy drinks you bought trying to survive another day of chronic weariness. It is less than what you spent on painkillers trying to soothe the physical aches of a relentless spiritual battle. What is the value of having the Creator's massive hands permanently seal the door against the envious one? Touch the first pinned comment. Go to the page right now. When you apply the principles of Tammuz, you enforce the divine severance over your life. The envious one designed this chapter to utterly break you, but in this precise hour of spiritual culmination, God is using his sovereign hands to permanently seal this destructive cycle shut. Do not wait until the storm tries to push the door open again. Secure your digital book today. And if you are wondering why the attacks seem to target your finances right at the finish line, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. In the next video, I'm going to reveal the exact spiritual mechanism the enemy uses to drain your resources just when you are about to finally rest. If this channel has been a spiritual covering for your life, if you have felt God's presence through these messages and want to help us keep this ministry alive, consider leaving a contribution through the thanks button right below this video. It is a heart-shaped icon. Any seed is a massive blessing for our work. That was my final request. I am waiting for you there. The cycle is broken. The book is closed. If you can feel the weight lifting off your chest right now, declare in the comments, "My chapter of exhaustion is permanently sealed," because you are no longer the one carrying the crushing burden of holding the atmosphere of the house together in the dark while smiling through the pain. You are the chosen one resting securely behind the heavy lock, guarded forever by the sovereign hands of God.